Well, until then, I don't know, Elizabeth, if we can't really approve anything yet, would you want to share what
Sure.
your news?
Yeah, sure. I'm happy to. And I don't have anything that requires, I think, a voter approval. Um, Really, I just wanted to say that largely for my own benefit, but also in case anybody else on the commission wants to follow along, I have decided that I'm going to create a brief quarterly report on the things that I've done. So I have a Q4 report from 2020 that I will upload to the shared Google Drive sometime this week. A little late, I'm sorry about that, but at least I've got one.
I think that's a great idea and a good thing to model for, I don't know, tracking our chats with cities.
Well, it would have been helpful to me, I think, coming in to a vacant post if I, kind of had, my mind just works that way. It would have been helpful to me to have, maybe some sense of what the representative was kind of doing in between meetings, but mainly I'm doing that to keep track of my, own activities, and so that, the commission will know that there are things that are happening, even if they're not, exchanges. Okay. And I'm assuming that means it's a document of public record, and that's fine. It's just a brief overview of what I did really it's what I did in the third and the fourth quarter of last year, but mainly it was fourth quarter stuff. So I just kind of smushed it together. The other thing I wanted to just let folks know is I am continuing to try to make contact with my counterpart in our French sister city. And I have several people working on this with me. So I sent an official email out in December to the designee who's in charge of all of their international relations for the city of Besançon. And I have not been contacted by them. So I've got some a couple of folks who in our community who either have contacts in Besançon or are native French speakers who are kind of helping me figure out, what the next step needs to be, or who I might, maybe making phone calls on our behalf, or just kind of helping me figure out who in the mayor's office might, need to be contacted separately. And that's my primary goal for this month, is to get is to establish that contact with our new whoever it is in Besançon who is now in charge of overseeing sister city activities. And that's really all I have to report at this point.
Good luck. We hope you are able to connect with them
soon. I will eventually.
Yes. I'm sure. Adrian, is your Zoom functioning? Sounds like no.
It is. I have troubles every single time, and I guess I need to start earlier, but it's that click to join that instead of having the Zoom link. But I worked it out. So I'm going to try to remember what I did for the next time.
Okay, cool. Awesome. We're glad you're here. Do you have the minutes ready, or do you have a document ready for the minutes?
I have a document ready to take the minutes for this meeting. Is that what you mean?
Yeah.
Yep.
Awesome. All right. I think we're ready to get rolling then.
Sorry for that delay, folks.
Oh, we're just glad you're here. I guess first order of business is to approve last month's minutes from end of January. Hopefully y'all had a chance to take a peek at those, and does anyone see any issues with last month's minutes? We went over a lot of stuff from what I recall. Any motion to approve?
And we're talking, real quick, we're talking about the subcommittee meeting minutes or the regular meeting minutes?
Regular meeting minutes.
Or, motion to approve those?
I'll second. If I can, I guess.
No corrections then that I need to know about? I was the minute taker.
I think you did well. All
Okay.
right. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Right. Well, I think, Amanda, the floor is yours for all this.
Great. Thanks, Kate. Can you all hear me okay?
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So, so our main agenda item, I think today is the grants discussion, and I want to start by thanking our grants committee, who's been working very hard since our last meeting, reviewing the grant applications received, and we met last week to share feedback and consolidate a set of clarifying questions and recommendations that we'd like to share with all of you this afternoon. So special thanks to Adrian and Dave and Damon and Kate for being part of that review process. And what I propose for our discussion today is that I can walk us through, I've shared with you the link for the kind of main executive summary version of the 8 grant applications received for this grant cycle of 2020 to 2021. And we'll go through, I'll give just a kind of a high level overview first, and then we'll go through the 8, and we'll try to keep it moving, but I think we have a recommendation, and since we luckily have a quorum, I think what we'd like to do is get the commission's approval of each of the grant committee's recommendations, and see if there are any concerns around those or modifications you'd make. And there are probably a few discussion points we've also highlighted under a few of the grants that we might want to open up for discussion. Does that sound okay to everyone? Okay, great. So do you have the document in front of you, or would it be helpful if I shared my screen? For everyone?
I have the document.
I have mine handy.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay,
Um,
great.
Amanda, I just had a quick question for logistics. Your document that has the review notes in it, and
Mhm.
also perhaps your summary of the grants. I don't know which one you're going to be working from now. Probably review notes.
It is called 2020 to 21 grant application summary. I included the link in the
Okay.
chat. Here is the more executive summary. It doesn't have all of the detailed notes, but sort of summary.
But is that in the, I just want to know, like, I tried to find that in the grants materials folder.
Mhm.
Where are, I can get to these documents via the link, but are they in our
Yes.
Charlottesville Sister City?
Yes.
Zone?
There is a 2021 grants folder that you can pull up. I'll have to find it myself, but yes, it is saved there. There is a section of the Google Drive for sister cities called, let's see, folder, where is it? Grants materials.
Right,
And then you
I'm-
click on that, and then there's 2020 to 2021 grants.
right, I'm there, but I just couldn't find either of those 2 docs in it.
And it's in that next, so once you click on that, there are several Word documents that appear, which is where that's saved. Do you want me to share my screen?
No, let's not waste time. I just realized, I think the issue is with my my Google label or whatever. So sorry, go ahead.
Okay. And we can connect offline, Adrian, if you're still having trouble finding it.
Yeah.
But yes, I've been trying to save everything there.
Thank you.
Okay, great. So, so I think first I want to say that I think we're really pleased that despite the pandemic and the holiday period upon which we straddled the grants application process, we received 8 completed applications by the deadline, which met the target we had previously discussed in last month's meeting. So we didn't have to re-advertise or extend the deadline. So that was great. Just as a reminder, in terms of the budgeted grant amount for this cycle that we agreed to as a commission, the total grant budget is $16,000 for this cycle. Across the 8 applications received, the grant budget proposals totaled $28,449. After the review of the grants by the committee, we would recommend moving forward with funding several of these, which we'll talk about, that totals somewhere around $11,800, give or take. There may be a little bit of further revision to 1 or 2 of the budget proposals after today's discussion, but somewhere in that range. We also would recommend that a couple of the grant proposals be considered for other funding lines within the commission's budget. So also very glad you're here today, Michael, too, so we can kind of bring your budget viewpoint into these discussions. But one potentially being a sponsorship and a second more of a travel scholarship opportunity. And then across the sister cities, in total, we had 1 application proposed, and this is summary. This is sort of a summary of those that we think make sense to move forward with. One that would be focused on Weiwei, our new potential future sister city, friendship city. Besançon 1, no applications or proposals for Poggio. 2 potentially for Winneba. 1 would be the event sponsorship. And 1 that could potentially cut across all 4 sister cities. So that just is kind of a snapshot, and 1 that we have some discretion around and can discuss too, which city it can make sense to focus on. Are there any questions or additions from the committee just around that high level overview of the proposals received before we dive into those? Okay. Great. So the first one, the first proposal is called Peace and Creative Connection Through Art, submitted by Mountainside Arts School. And this is the proposal that could be focused on any sister city to be determined. And the applicant suggested that this commission make the decision, though they did express a first choice of Weiwei, but would be open to our feedback. And this is one of 2 portraiture projects that we received proposals for that would bring together children and teens from one of our sister cities with children in the Charlottesville community to create portraits of one another and exchange them in a virtual format, but ultimately ship the finished products between the 2 sister cities. This is a proposal of $1,850. There was an original request of $1,475. We had some follow-up questions and an exchange with the applicant since our meeting last week with a request to consider increasing the budget by $375 to account for some potential funding need associated with the sister city mailing back the finished products to Charlottesville. And so that, if we were to agree to that, we would increase the budget slightly to $1,850. The grants committee, upon discussion, I think would recommend approval of this grant. And I think one question is, do we approve it at the increased budget amount of $1,850, which is a new development since our meeting last week? And then secondly, I think very importantly, does the commission have a preference for which sister city would we want to specify, or would we want to leave that to the applicant to decide? So I think those are the two points for discussion, and approval would, so maybe the first question is an approval, but let me just pause here to see if there's any additional context or information that the committee wants to share before we seek approval.
So the one thing that really stood out to us about this particular project was the way it connects with students, and we really like that. But it also stood out that the initial proposal, as Amanda stated, had no budget applied for resources or postage from the other country. And I know that they are the ones that provided I believe they're the ones that provided the additional number of 375. I wonder if that's adequate. I mean, I'm sure they figured that out, but they don't know what country they're going to be shipping from or purchasing products in for, the work. But I have to believe expenses vary depending on what city it's in. And I tend to wonder if we should round it up to 2,000 personally. It doesn't mean they have to spend that. But, the original budget was for a lot of work to be done here at a cost of $1,475. And a lot of the same work is going to be done over there for $375. I know that there are, management expenses here and expenses related to the organization. But it seems to me $375 for the other sister city, whatever it is, could be a little low. So that's my only response to the amended proposal, is whether or not we would want to consider rounding it up a little bit more. We do have the capacity, considering the proposals we have. And I mean, not that I'm not saying that we should just throw money around, but I also would, we want our projects to be really successful. And if rounding it up a little bit helps the other community make it more successful, I mean, it's already a very well-priced project. So I would be open to raising it to 2,000 myself.
Damon, do you want to make a motion? Do we want to go ahead and take a decision on that?
Unless, I'm open to other people's thoughts and conversations. I'm glad to make a motion.
I'm a little upset that they didn't put a whole lot of thought into this response. We don't know, for instance, if they have other sources of funding too, for this project, but I don't know, I'm a little hesitant to just give them more money because we think they need it to be successful. This should have been something that they thought out in requesting this funding in the first place. It doesn't take too much time to do the math and figure out how much like postage would cost, or like those prices. I think you're right. I think it is going to cost more, but is that our job to decide how much their grant is?
It's also not our job to decide what city to do it with.
Yeah.
I've always kind of had a little issue with that personally. I mean, generally, yeah, I think that we should be responding to their proposals. But either way, I mean, I think they might need a little bit more money for it, but
I would tend to agree with leaving the onus on them to realize what their budget might require and perhaps get other funding, or perhaps approach us once they get clear on the city, but to not maybe do that work for them.
Well, I would definitely agree that we should be cautious about doing work for those who are applying for our funds. Not only for this one, but all. Not that we wouldn't want to connect people to people where, you know, to our sister cities, the people that are organizing there. But beyond that, I think the applicants should do most of the work.
But I mean, even like the thinking of it, thinking through, perhaps if we can keep communication lines open. I'm still new at this, but I'm imagining that as if they were granted the money we're talking about and they move forward with it, we would be in touch with them. And if they did run into an enormous problem, we would hope they'd either communicate with us or they'd perhaps find other funding.
Yeah. And
Okay.
I mean, I don't recall them saying that they were going to seek out other funds for this one, right?
I don't think so. Okay, well, are there any other perspectives? Or what I'm hearing is maybe we just go ahead. I'm hearing, at least from Kate and Adrian, kind of a counter proposal to keep the budget to the 1850 as requested, based on their latest estimate of the expenses. Are there any additional views or objections to that? Damon, would you be comfortable with moving ahead with that approval?
Sure, yeah.
And
I think we
then-
should also decide if we're going to have them go with their first choice of
Yeah.
Huawei.
so let's make that a sort of a,
Could we consider, I was imagining we might go through all 8 before we said yes to each one, but is the MO going through each one and saying yes and checking it off? Is that?
we can also return to them if that's more efficient.
I guess I thought
I
about
think the
that in
decision
terms
around the
of-
city might make sense to come back to potentially,
Yeah,
if we do
yeah.
want to share a view on that, to sort of think it through, some sort of kind of spreading out of the city focus. We can also come back to this if we want to keep cruising through. Does the group have a preference?
I also like the idea of doing a quick review of all of the
Okay.
ones you're recommending funding for, so
Then come back.
that,
Okay.
so that by the end of that, you know, we may have a better sense of,
The whole picture.
yes.
Okay. So let's go ahead then to number 2, which is the International High School Exchange. This is a proposal that was conditionally approved last year to be focused on Plevin, and then was not ultimately carried out or finally approved because COVID hit in the period that some of the follow-up actions were being sorted out with the city schools. So we received a revised proposal for a study visit of Charlottesville High School students affiliated with the International Club at the high school to make a visit to Besançon in the next academic year. And so very much modeled after the similar proposal we received from Plevin last year. And I think the commission and the grants committee really liked, and in fact, last year had talked about whether we could provide even a greater support to allow more students to participate or partake in the tour. $4,000 requested. The grants committee discussed this and recommended moving forward with funding this through the travel scholarships program, which is still under development. But with recognition that travel wouldn't take place until later this year at the earliest. And so we would work through the travel scholarships program and in the meantime, and work with the organizer of this trip too. This could be a good test case and opportunity to further develop the scholarships program. However, unfortunately, after we followed up with the applicant after last week's meeting, we learned that the applicant had spoken to 2 major educational tour companies, and it seems highly unlikely that student travel could happen this fall And so, or before the end of the grant cycle for this next round. And so she would like to revisit this project for next year. But I think given COVID related travel restrictions, it seems unlikely this could move ahead. She explored informally with a few students the possibility of doing more virtual exchange with high school students in Besançon as an alternative or possible lead up to an ultimate in-person visit. But the feedback received is that there's a fair amount of fatigue with some of the virtual exchange right now on the part of the students, and didn't feel like there was going to be a lot of uptake or buy-in. So that's where we are with that proposal. So it seems like it's a project that is still percolating, could be an opportunity for travel scholarships in the future. And I think would suggest we'd want to continue developing the scholarship program nonetheless, which is already next item on our agenda for the grants committee after we get through this process. And maybe keep in contact with the applicant. And it might be also something I'm thinking, Elizabeth, too, within your role as liaison too, it'd be great to kind of get your feedback on this, and potentially you'd want to have some contact too with the applicant at some point to further think through this opportunity in the future. Anything to add?
Well, I would definitely want to reach out to her myself and talk with her about the nature of this particular exchange. Very supportive of any kind of exchange that allows low income students, or in this case, she says low to moderate income students, a chance to travel. Because to be honest, since I'm relatively new to the commission, I do not know if there have been exchanges where our students have gone to Besançon in the past, to what degree those exchanges have been affordable for, you know, a certain population of the high school. However, what does need to be said is that, you know, of the sister cities, Besançon is the one that has the most exchanges already happening. And so on the one hand, we've got people in place who are both here in Charlottesville at the high school level, both at CHS and at Monticello, who are very enthusiastic about helping get exchanges going. And we've got partners there who are also very active and engaged. And therefore, there's a good structure in place. So it's not something that has to be created from the bottom up. On the other hand, what I'd like to find out is how this fits into the general picture about other exchanges that are already happening, and kind of what, you know, what sets this one apart in a way that is that is really meaningful in terms of asking, you know, for us to fund it through scholarships or through a grant. And so I have a little, you know, a little work to do. I think I could do a little work just to kind of connect to Rebecca, who is the grant submitter, and also our other contacts who have been historically involved in the exchanges that have happened back and forth between high school students, and just make sure they're all talking to each other and there's a clear sense, I guess, that we know just know that this is you know, I don't know, that we just feel like that they're, you know, this is a unique kind of program that's not duplicating something else that's already happening.
Great.
Does that make sense to people? Also, do you know from the details if this was intended to be a 1-week exchange, if it was intended to include a homestay, if it was going to happen during the school year? I'm assuming it would happen. Fall 2021 was mentioned, so, you know, as opposed to just a travel, a tour where kids are, you know, do you have other details about that?
It was a week over Thanksgiving. And as far as the activities in the homestay business, that I don't think she specified.
Okay.
I think it could be, Elizabeth, great to connect you with the applicant and to have those further discussions. Um, I like very much your suggestion there. And just to note also, Neely, as the school's rep on the commission, has also engaged with her
Good.
in the prior cycle
Okay,
to sort through some of the kind of risk management questions that had come up last year around taking students abroad. So we'd want to kind of keep her kind of looped into this discussion too.
sure. And how many students were they hoping to subsidize with the grant?
Or is 4, yeah.
Or,
Yes,
Or,
it was
yeah.
4.
okay,
With the full application is available in the
Yep.
grants folder, Elizabeth,
Okay.
and it has all that detail. I think there was going to be potentially other fundraising effort to mobilize some additional resources to, yeah.
I'll go back and take a look at the full grant, but it sounds like, I mean, the recommendation of the grants committee was, to endorse the request, but basically to try to fund it through the travel scholarship program and not through the grants program. And since we're looking at deferring anyway, probably until 2022, it seems like there's not a sense of urgency about it, and it gives us some time to get a few more questions answered, or maybe for me to just insert myself a little bit and be sure that I'm, kind of able to bring back to the commission that, the additional information that might help us make the decision.
That
And
sounds right. Oh,
I
sorry,
would-
Adrian.
I would also suggest that we be clear on whether or not, my sense was not that we were deferring in the sense of grant awarded, just pushing it ahead a year, that we really were not awarding any grant. And she,
Right.
for her part, I think she's kind of pulling her application.
That was my interpretation. It's a withdrawal of the application, but would like to reconsider for next year.
Okay.
But I think in the meantime, this is a great opportunity to
I
further
agree.
develop those relationships and connections
And the
for the grants
coordination.
committee to develop the travel scholarship program and really think about how sort of the level of need would be determined, which was one of the questions we had to ensure
Right.
that the funding would support the students with the greatest need. And so I think this is a good opportunity for us to really figure out how this would work in practice. I think I have a related question. Michael, I didn't pull up the budget, but do we actually have a line for travel scholarships in our budget, or would that need to be created?
It's not there right now, but
Okay.
it could be added. What we do have is we have one for programs and travel for each of the sister cities, but that was also sort of an idea towards the if there was any administrative travel going back and forth that was related. So I think travel scholarships would probably go into a separate part, but nothing's earmarked for it right now.
Okay, that's good to know. So we may need to follow up on that point in the future around the budget too, if we wanted to earmark funding for travel scholarships once we have a process in place. And in this fiscal year, I assume it would be moving budget lines around rather than any new funding. Yeah, so that might be a future item of discussion or decision making for this body. Okay. There was, I think, just one other question here, if I'm remembering correctly. The applicant just asked if the commission did have any suggestions or ideas for virtual exchange options. I think she was maybe a little skeptical based on the feedback she'd heard, but was really open to our suggestions. So if we do have any thoughts around how to foster connection between our high school students and students in Besançon, so Elizabeth, that might be great to consider too in that follow-up if we see opportunities there in this period.
Yeah, and Kate, you can probably weigh in on this. I think the education subcommittee meeting tried to begin brainstorming about ways that there might be virtual student exchanges.
Mhm.
So there may very well be some creative ideas that come out of the subcommittee work.
Mhm.
Nothing is particular, nothing specific has been established at this point that is, specific to virtual high school student exchanges between Charlottesville students and Besançon students, but the conversation is occurring.
Mhm.
Is
Great.
that, anything you want to weigh in on about that, Kate? Because you were part of that subcommittee meeting.
I mean, I think there's a lot of ideas out there. I think
Too.
I think that I don't know, there were talks about also the Spanish with the Weiwei edition, thinking of a Spanish, a way for our Spanish teachers to sort of collect and get together, develop some sort of professional development around establishing a virtual connection in that sense.
Yeah.
Which also ties closely to one of the grants in this series and internet connectivity in Weiwei, which we'll get to momentarily. But I think it could be something that many of our high schools could take on, especially like French teachers within our high schools who want to establish this on that front. I think it's very doable, and I don't know, once we are able to connect with your counterpoint and based on something, we could set something like that up.
Okay. Maybe I'll move us forward because we only have about 15 minutes remaining here and have a lot to get through still. So I'm going to try to breeze through, and perhaps we can reserve discussion now for the end so that we can take that big picture view of the remaining grants. The third one, face-to-face portraits of our sister cities, is the second portraiture project proposal from the Bridge Progressive Arts Initiative in partnership with Speak, the Language Center. And this is the application that would relate to all 4 sister/friendship cities, and would link artists from all 4 sister cities to create portraits of, I think it's 2 individuals per city that would create kind of an exhibition essentially. And Speak Language Center would provide some support to the language and interpretation around this project. So the sister/friendship cities would select the 2 participants to be paired with the Charlottesville-based artists that will be competitively selected from a pool of applicants. This proposal was also one that the grants committee would recommend we move forward with, funding requested of $39.50. We felt like this was a great opportunity to potentially build connection with all 4 sister cities, a really nice potential product coming out of this as well. One point for consideration by the commission too is this will require the project managers to really tap into connections of this commission, particularly our sister city liaisons, to help make connections to local contacts to identify the 2 individuals that would be the subjects of the portraits. And so we would need to think through the best approach for facilitating those connections. So I'm going to keep moving us forward, though. Please hold your questions and comments so we can just make sure we get through everything, and then we'll come back to this one. But again, the recommendation is that we approve for funding. Fourth, Sister City Conversations, virtual group Italian, French, Spanish, and English courses and conversation. This is a proposal from Speak Language Center, again, that would be available to all 4 sister/friendship cities. Speak indicated that if we were to choose between the 2, the aforementioned project and this one, the preference would be for the portraiture project. This one would create a language learning partnership with our sister cities, coordinated by Speak. We ultimately, after a lot of discussion, decided that this one we wouldn't recommend funding as proposed. However, we think that there are some potential opportunities for shaping further collaboration with Speak in the future for language training, particularly around upcoming Sister Cities trips, where visitors from Charlottesville could really benefit from some language training before going to really optimize the experience. So we even talked about whether we might want to think about even creating a budget line in the future for language training around organized trips, and potentially something we could partner with Speak on. So that's something for the commission's consideration in the future that we wanted to bring to your attention. Number 5, Weiwei and Ixaton Foundation supported project focused on internet and creating internet connectivity and more IT platforms, really to facilitate exchange between our cities, but also to be kind of an investment in building up the IT architecture and infrastructure in Weiwei. Kate alluded to this proposal. This would result in an internet connection for Weiwei, a public internet connection with a wireless extender, and in partnership with the Code for Charlottesville, create a website for local businesses and nonprofits in Weiwei to create business listings and advertise their services to open up kind of the market, almost in preparation for more e-commerce, which was kind of the longer term, I think, vision around that website. This project requested $4,000. We recommend partially approving this with a careful review of the budget, potentially removing 1 or 2 line items that we had some questions around, including creating engravings as souvenirs was one that we didn't feel was particularly important and something we'd want to fund out of the commission's budget. So our recommendation would be to move forward. We saw this as a really important potential first investment and a way to really partner with Ixaton to build the connection, literally and figuratively, with Weiwei. Number 6, Pen and Paper Make Sisters Right is a proposal focused on Winneba and would create, and in partnership with the 100 Black Women Association of Charlottesville, creating a Pen Pals program, linking girls in Winneba and Charlottesville in a pen pal relationship, and create an infrastructure for ongoing exchange across the 2 cities. And this project proposes $4,000 in funding, inclusive of 1 trip for the project organizer to go to Winneba and establish relationships, and a local partner with whom to work to support this Pen Pal program on the Winneba side. Our recommendation is to move forward with this project with partial funding of $2,500 would be our suggestion. We have had some follow-up already with the applicant around a few questions, particularly related to the budget. And so if, we wanted to just make sure that we had some clarification on those before fully agreeing to fund that, so we could potentially just, as we make final decisions, ensure that, those key questions that have been responded to satisfactorily. And Dave, thanks for facilitating that too. And the next one, 7, Reading Ghanaian Voices at the Virginia Book Festival, Festival of the Book, is a proposal to support one of the virtual events for the festival with 2 Ghanaian authors that's already planned and will be live streamed, with the potential for a Zoom-based book discussion of the featured novel with community members in Winneba. The Festival of the Book organizers requested $3,524 for this. We felt like this was not a great use of the grants funding, but would like to suggest we consider event sponsorship of around $1,000 or so for the Festival of the Book. This does not focus specifically on literature coming from Winneba or the region. So I think that was one hesitancy. And so this event is not really seem designed around Winneba as a sister city, rather Ghanaian culture and literature. So we see value, but not the direct connection to our sister city. But based on past precedent and the opportunity for some visibility for the sister cities program, we think it could make sense to sponsor this as an event. And then finally, the last application received Diverse Italy, a journey into the new Bel Paese. I don't speak Italian, but the proposal was focused on our sister city relationship in Poggio, but similar to the previous proposal, really has more of a focus on Italian culture as a whole and not a specific focus on Poggio. And would result in a series of courses or lectures around the evolution of Italian culture, which we thought was a really interesting idea, but didn't feel like it would have direct benefit or relationship, again, to our sister city of Poggio. So we recommend that we would not approve this one in this case, though it was the only one that was specifically focused on Poggio. So I will pause here first to see if there's any additional information or clarification from the grants committee around any of these before we make final decisions.
I think you did a wonderful job explaining
Yes.
them.
Thank you.
Okay.
I've got a question for
Thank you.
Dave. Dave, do you think based on the response that you received that the 2,500 is still an appropriate amount to fund that exchange? And I'm talking about the Pen Pal
Pals.
program.
Yeah, I think it's sufficient to get it off the ground and put some infrastructure in place. And she has already started seeking out other sources of funding, which I think is appreciated. And so yeah, I think that'd be a good show of support.
Cool, great, thanks.
Additional questions or clarifications? Okay, perhaps we could just maybe run through now, having taken stock of the 8. And in the document that hopefully everyone's referring to, that you see in bold kind of the recommendation of the committee to the commission. And perhaps we just need to, I can make a motion for each and see if we have agreement to move forward. Okay. So for the first, peace and creative connection through art, I would make a motion for the commission to approve $1,850 for the proposed project.
Amanda,
Adrian? Yes,
may
go
I
ahead.
ask one question? Is this new budget, the 1,850, is that included in the overall 11,000 something you cited at the very
Yes,
beginning?
I adjusted the top line. Thank you, Adrian. Good question. I did increase the overall budget since the committee met last week in terms of so that takes us to around 11,800 if we were to approve everything recommended by the committee. So do we approve $1,850 for this proposed project? I make a motion to approve $1,850 for peace and creative connection through art.
I
I'll
second.
second it. Either way.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any objections or abstentions? Okay. approved. I think there is a second decision around which city, in this case. Do we want to specify a city or ask the applicant to make their selection with a specified preference for Wayway? Does anyone want to make a motion in this instance?
Can you hear me? I'll move that we ask the grant requester to select the city, the target city.
I'll second that motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any objections? Okay. Okay, so we'll follow up with that request that the applicant specify the sister city. Based on the information we have to date, we have reason to believe it will likely be Wayway. So another nice opportunity to develop that relationship. Okay, next, I think that there's no decision needed on number 2 on the International High School Exchange. This application essentially has been withdrawn, but for reconsideration, but we talked about some next steps. Thank you, Elizabeth, for offering to follow up with the applicant. And the grants committee will do follow-up formal communication with each of the applicants after today's meeting and can loop you in, Elizabeth, to
Okay.
facilitate that connection and
Thank you.
next step. Number 3, face-to-face portraits of our sister cities. I would make a motion to fully fund this proposal for $3,950.
Second.
All in favor? Great. So approved, no objections. Okay. Number 4, Sister City Conversations. We recommend not funding. So I make a motion to, do we need to make those motions or is it only for approvals?
I think it's-
Procedural question.
No, I think we have to vote.
Okay, to not approve. Okay,
Yeah.
thanks, Dave. So I make a motion to not approve this application called, sorry, flipping between documents, Sister City Conversations. So motion to not approve. However, we would like to revisit potential collaboration with Speak.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Now, aren't we talking about the high school exchange? No?
We already passed over that one because
I'm
we
sorry,
kind of considered it withdrawn.
Gotcha,
I don't think we
gotcha.
need to take action on that one. Is that, Dave,
Okay.
do you agree? Okay. Thanks.
Yes, I hear you. Can I just
Okay.
know, Amanda, you made the motion and then who seconded it?
Dave,
Dave? Okay.
Mhm. Thank you for capturing this, Adrian. Okay, so next, number 5, Wayway, an Ixaton Internet project. I make a motion to partially approve around $3,500 for this project to be finalized in collaboration with the grants committee and the applicant based on a final budget submission.
Should we specifically state what we don't want to fund? Because we specifically don't want to fund the 3D printer.
With the removal of the 3D printer and the engraving, is that, or that's the engraving, Damon?
Yes, the 3D
was the
printer
main
would have done that
concern.
work.
Yeah, I think the 3D printer was. for the
Yeah, I mean, I
engraving
think that was
project.
the main thing that we really wanted to take out, and that was $500.
Mhm. So that's what has been removed. That's how we got to the 3,500. We
Yes.
backed that out.
Mhm.
Do we want to approve at $3,500?
Isn't that provisional?
I think it was provisional, but we haven't agreed on I mean, I think it was open as to whether there was anything else that we wanted to remove from the budget, but we only discussed the removal of the 3D printer for the engravings. That was the one thing that the committee felt we definitely wanted to remove. If there are no other items that were identified, then perhaps we could go ahead with the 3,500.
So really, it sounds
I-
more
I
like,
didn't-
it sounds more like we're approving up to $3,500, depending on a further and complete budget review.
I think
What
that's a good way to put
I-
it, Elizabeth.
Doing.
I mean, I thought that we basically saw their budget and felt that that was the only thing we really wanted to take out. I mean,
Okay.
we haven't gotten a very thorough budget for hardly any of these grants, you know,
Mhm.
a really in-depth one.
And in most cases, as I understand it, how it works is it will be reimbursement based. So based on incurred expenses
Okay.
up to $3,500.
So basically, the committee was willing to approve $3,500,
Correct.
and so we're approving that. And if they end up spending less, they end up spending less. That's right.
Correct. I think that's fair. Okay, so let me maybe provide a revised motion here to approve up to $3,500 for the Weiwei Ixtaton Internet project. I make a motion.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Okay, the next, number 6, pen and paper, Pen Pals Winneba project. I make a motion to fund partially the proposed project at $2,500.
Second,
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so approved. Number 7, reading Ghanaian Voices at the Virginia Festival of the Book. I make a motion that we do not approve for grants funding and commit $1,000 for a sponsorship, event sponsorship, which will be a separate line item of our budget. I hope, Michael, can you confirm that we have sponsorship budget first, maybe as a point? clarification.
There is money that we can allocate towards sponsorship. I had a
Okay.
question about the Festival of the Book. In their application, they said that we sponsored them in 2019. Was it the same authors or was it? Okay,
Yeah, different event.
okay,
And we had approved sponsorship for the 2020 event, which was called off due to the pandemic. But we had approved an event, Plebin focused, for last year.
all right, yeah.
Mhm.
so
So-
this can be a combined motion, or do we need to vote separately on not funding the grant request, but separately?
Maybe we'll do it in 2 parts then to keep it clear. So we propose to, I make a motion to not fund the Virginia Festival of the Book project with grant funding.
I'll second.
All in favor? Any objections? Elizabeth, Adrian, I didn't see your hands.
Oh, no, I'm in
Yes,
favor.
no
Okay.
objection.
Okay, good. So Michael, just before we make a motion all around the sponsorships, do you know how much funding is available for sponsorships?
So, yes, let me bring that up real quick. Might go over there. So if we end up doing the 11,800, then we have a total spend this year of 12,300 according to the current budget. And so that would leave us with a balance of 25,475, barring any addition from the city, the allocation from the city. So we do have, some flex room for doing sponsorships for other events.
Would anyone like to make a motion around the sponsorships?
For this particular event, right? The Ghanaian writers?
Yes, so I think the way it works, Dave, do you want to explain how it works? I think you've had more experience with the past sponsorship.
Yeah, it's, I think the last time we did 1,000 as well. And basically it just gets us some visibility, as you said earlier. So we're at the event, we're named, we're acknowledged for our financial support. It helps to underwrite the costs of that particular panel. So it's not a grant, it's not a project per se, but still helps them out. I don't know if that answered your question or not. But. So we just need a motion to, I'll make a motion to approve $1,000 sponsorship for Virginia Festival of the Book for their Ghanaian author program.
I'll second. Do
All in favor?
approve?
Aye.
Any abstentions or objections? None. Okay, so approved. 1,000 in sponsorships for Virginia Festival of the Book. So we'll also need to follow up on that one fairly quickly because it's coming up in March. So this is probably one that will require quicker action. Finally, the Project 8, Diverse Italy. I make a motion to not approve the project as proposed for Diverse Italy.
Second.
Who was that? Who seconded?
Dave.
Thanks.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any objections or abstentions? Okay, so approved.
Great work, Amanda, and your committee.
Yes. Thank you,
Great.
Amanda.
Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry, we went a little over. Are there any? Got it done?
How
Okay.
does the next step work?
We have in the past sponsored the Virginia Festival of Cultures.
Mhm.
Anybody know if that's happening this year?
It is. We just got an email from them in our sister cities email thing about it. So it is
Okay.
happening in May. And that is
Right.
typically a $500 sponsorship.
Okay. Should we do a line item for that as well?
Might as well. We typically do it every year and we didn't do it last year, obviously. So
All right,
Mhm.
is that something we need to do a motion on?
I'll move that we designate $500 for sponsorship of Festival of the Cultures.
Okay, a second.
All in favor?
Aye.
I
Any objections or abstentions? Okay, great.
can reach out to them because I've reached out to them last year and then we didn't do anything because, but I'll reach out to
Okay.
them.
Excellent. Thank you, Kate. And then as for next steps, Adrian, your question is, so I think our immediate next steps as a committee are to now circle back with formal communication to each applicant around the decision of the commission. And to provide, we have some examples of similar correspondence we've used to create an official letter. And so that's what we'll need to work on next. And I can be in touch with the grants committee to help organize that follow-up. And I've appreciated very much all the support from the committee members and some of the outreach. We were able to get some clarifications on various questions to enable us to kind of get through the decision-making today. So thanks to everyone for pitching in on that.
Thank you.
Okay, great. So back over to our co-chairs.
We're over the hour mark. So we have like a tiny bit of sunlight left. I would like to end our meeting if that's okay with everyone.
Do we know what our next, do we have our next meeting date and already set?
I made a request, 'cause I don't know if you were able to, it was always gonna be third third Tuesday of the month for the upcoming months. I think I asked through May. Is that something that we can do?
Yes, so I've already actually set that up in the system, and you should find at least, let's see, March and April's event on our city calendar. I believe I have to enter May, but the others are already there.
Great.
Thank you, Max.
Thank
So-
Do you
yes.
have the date in front of you of that third Tuesday in March?
16th. It's the same
Oh,
same
of
day.
course. Yep. Okay.
So that'll be the next time we reconnect. And then I'd imagine in April or May, we would have a subcommittee meeting within there to plan out some stuff. And I know Dave and I are actively working at putting together an official message to Weiwei because the president of Guatemala is going to Weiwei next week.
No, it's the US ambassador.
That's it. U.S. ambassador to Guatemala is going there next week, and it would be nice to have it ready for them.
Oh,
So,
the letter? That's great.
Yes.
so we'll share that with you all too, so you get to see it. But yeah. So we're making a goal to have that done by the end of this week, so they can have it. I believe it's the 25th is when the U.S. ambassador is heading over there. So yes. All right.
Good work.
Thank you so
Thanks.
much, Amanda.
everybody.
This was quick and simple, and
Hopefully not too. Yeah, good. Well, thank you so much to the commission and to the committee, and thanks so much, Max and Lasheen, for your support too.
Yeah, thank you, Amanda, for all your great work.
Yes.
You put
Yeah.
many hours into it, so we
Yeah.
really appreciate
Well, I'm
it.
excited that we have some great projects coming up, and I think you know that we weren't sure how this would go with the pandemic, and sort of it's got some really interesting, I think, virtual engagement project ideas. So I think that's really encouraging for the future too. So
Great.
excellent. Well, thank you all. Have a good evening.
Great, thank
All
you.
right.
Bye,
Thank
everyone.
you.
Bye-bye.
Bye bye.